Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. We were talking about psychedelic substances in the previous episode, but we're going to zero in on coffee now because that's the ultimate psychedelic substance for most people.
Seems to be everyone's favourite.
Absolutely. You've been partaking at all recently? Or?
Yeah, I had one this morning.
Yeah, it gets you nice and fired up and all that sort of thing. So just we've spoken about coffee before in a previous life, obviously, a couple of times, so you'll be able to search for those videos and find those. But we're going to take a slightly different tack with this today because, well, first of all, I just want to start with, if you go into Google and look at and try to get advice on the effects of coffee on the body or the brain or whatever, you invariably end up with 2 or 3 different schools of thought, which are almost at the opposite ends of the spectrum. It's great for you, it's bad for you. And there doesn't seem to be anything underpinning, at least like definitive evidence either way, at least as far as what I've been in terms of whatever these opinion pieces are saying. And I find that interesting that like you can't point to something, or at least easily find something that can say definitively one way or the other, but it may be that it has different impacts on different people, and that is reflected in what people are saying. Have you found that?
Yeah, look, I think that's very close to the truth, actually. There is one, although I can't think who did it off the top of my head, but there's one very big study of around 40 or 50,000 people over 20 or 30 years where they looked at what happened to the coffee drinkers within this study, and they found that in some instances it lowered some diseases of aging. But let's face it, you could cherry pick those and ignore others. And it was only 30 years ago, coffee was going to kill us all by stopping our hearts or something like that. Yeah. So, I think it's whatever you choose to believe at the moment. But it seems to be keeping people happier, at least while they're alive.
Yeah, that's the important thing, isn't it? So having said all of that, I wanted to dive into the one particular subset of these topics, which is, does drinking coffee make you fat? Now, I just want to get out of the way from the first instance that if you put milk in it, you start putting sugar in it, you start putting added sweeteners, whatever it is, or you just go for your 1 litre Starbucks coffee each morning, yes, you're going to gain weight straight away. So we're going to just leave that to the side.
Is that a thing in Melbourne?
I don't frequent Starbucks, but I see the size of the cups that come out of that place and how many times people are drinking them each day. And I think, well, of course you're going to be gaining weight if you're doing that.
Well, I have been wondering because I've seen the size of the cup holders in American cars. Man, they're big.
So if you're taking that much sugar and fat through your coffee, when you've probably only got like 1 shot of coffee in a cup that's like this big or something, then yeah, of course you're going to gain weight. That's a no-brainer. So we'll leave that to the side for the time being. What I'm interested in, and I think this is for me more personal in the sense that it's more a colloquial thing for me. I can't prove it. There's no scientific basis for it. It's just my experience with it, is that I find that regardless if I do an espresso shot or a just a standard 200 ml sort of latte type thing in the morning, that by lunchtime I'm automatically reaching for not only more food but more sugary type snacks. Wow. I guess. Wow. And I know this because I've tried it multiple times in different scenarios, that if I don't drink it, quite often I can actually sail through lunch almost to late afternoon without eating anything. And now, and what I'd be interested in is that am I the freak show here as being the only one that this happens to, or is that something that's a bit more common? I typically have a sort of a low GI breakfast with a particular type of cereal that I eat that isn't like sugar laced and all of that. So on those mornings that I don't drink coffee, if I have that cereal, yeah, like I said, I'll just sail through probably till late afternoon, and that helps with my weight. I can tell you that much. But even if I have that, but then I have like a proper full strength coffee in the morning, I am going to be eating more by lunchtime automatically because I just have this intense craving to have more. So, is there anything from your hallowed experience with these things that could explain something like that?
Well, the first thing I want to do is experiment then. So what I'd like, you have your coffee at 11 and see then if you are hungry or not at lunch. I would say, and it works differently, but caffeine does raise the metabolism. So it's the potential that you're hungrier at lunchtime and more in need of sugary snacks could be because you've actually been burning a little bit more energy in the morning. And so that's why you actually feel that hunger late morning despite having the same breakfast every morning. What would be interesting is if you had a coffee around 11 or 11:30 in the morning and see if that actually suppresses your appetite for lunchtime, because caffeine actually can be an appetite suppressant.
But that's the interesting thing that's why I wanted to talk about this, is that I've continually heard that caffeine is an appetite suppressant. But then I'm wondering if I have that coffee at 11:30, I'm taking calories, assuming I'm having a cappuccino latte or whatever.
But if you have a latte, you've got enough calories then that would be your lunchtime meal, and you could actually skip lunch on a coffee without actually, risking malnourishment. That's probably not a good way of putting it, but the milk is a meal in itself. So you could trade out lunch just for a latte or cappuccino maybe, and that should see you through to you have a cup of soup at 3:30 or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
You should try them. See if having that coffee at 11 or 11:30 actually suppresses your appetite across lunchtime.
Yeah, I'll try that. I think I have obviously the main issue that I have too, which is a separate thing to this topic, is that caffeine obviously affects your sleep, and I find that even if I have one in the morning, it affects my sleep at night. So I must be a bit more sensitive to it perhaps than the standard person who can have up to 3 and still pump it out of their system before they go to sleep at night.
Yeah.
So this is the average that it says. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised that again, I'd have to test it more specifically, but I find regardless of when I have it, and I try not to, basically I have no real interest in having coffee after 12 o'clock anyway, but I find that regardless of when I have it in the morning, it will happen that about 4 or 5 hours later, I'm specifically going for foods that aren't going to be that great for me in the longer term, which has then led me to go, I'm going to have to cut back on this, reduce the impact of these things. But I do find that I do find that quite interesting. One other thing I wanted to mention is, and again, not that this article that I pulled up to refer to today is scientific, at least in any way, but there was an argument made in it about it's the actual caffeine that's doing it. So if you drank decaf, you wouldn't be having these cravings. Does that carry any weight at all?
Well, I've got no idea about that, but the thing is that if you were talking about coffee and not caffeine, coffee has a whole range of other active substances, glycoalkaloids, actually in the bean. So when you have a coffee, you could take the caffeine out. This is being shown, but there's still a whole range of factors in there, and it's actually been shown that for that reason, coffee is actually more addictive than caffeine.
Yeah.
So that's why tea drinkers might, sort of get off a little bit more scot-free, because there's not that amount of activity in the drink, which there is in a coffee drink. And then once again, if you drink cola, you're less likely to be addicted to caffeine. You probably want the rush or the trigger from sweeteners. But, so it's a very interesting but very subtle point.
And just finally, I think I might attest to that because I experimented with swapping it out with matcha tea, which I actually enjoy quite a lot, green tea. And that's actually one of the strongest teas you can get from a caffeine perspective. And I don't have those cravings that subsequent time afterwards, and it also doesn't affect my sleep either.
So there you go. It's probably something else actually in the coffee that really presses your buttons.
Yeah, absolutely. So just, I guess, wrapping it up, why, maybe from a more global perspective, is it that coffee just has different impacts on different people, and that's why it's hard to sort of pin these things down? And the best advice, I guess, that anyone could give, including us, is that if it's causing a problem for you, maybe you need to stop.
Well, that's always the truth, and you probably need to stop even if it's not causing a problem. But the thing about coffee that I think is really interesting is it is a social drink. It's socially acceptable. People do it in groups. People enjoy it in groups. And despite the fact we're all a little bit different and your experiences would be different to mine, when we actually sit there and drink it communally, there's a behavioural aspect, there's a social aspect to it that really makes it powerful. And I think that's the key to the whole caffeine or coffee culture. Should we stop? Well, we probably shouldn't drink as much as we do, but it's a easy, enjoyable, addictive drug that's socially acceptable.
Exactly.
I mean, what's more to love than that?
And having enjoying a cup of coffee with friends is a little different than pumping 4 coffees in the morning to get that report done.
Yeah, that's right. Or sitting around taking a whole lot of psychedelics to get that report done for your team. I don't think that'll work either.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, Steve, we might wrap it up there. So don't forget to check out our website, scitechculture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. You can subscribe to our YouTube and Vimeo channels, our RSS feeds, get us on your phones, devices, and I hope you enjoy all the content there. We greatly appreciate you visiting our website. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.